Yeah, but it's a matter of time. So
They
Israel
tried
and
to get
Turkey.
rid of Erdogan in 2016 by a coup. Turkey was like the most country that has coup on the planet, like over and over and over for 80 years. So being part of NATO is just balancing that the balance of power, trying to go through it.
For example, I'm from Somalia. So we had independent foreign policy in the 80s, and we had resources that the U.S. wanted. We were supposed to basically give them all our resources and receive nothing, and they destroyed our government from within. They funded different movements. One of my family members was in the government for over 25, 27 years.
Do this and we could get more into it when it's in the middle of the day and not like first thing in the morning like it is here. But we need to analyze why all these stories coming out about Trump.
Oh, you guys have no choice now.
Oh, stupid. They're not trying to kill themselves and have a bad government. Most of these people are being destabilized from the outside, and you see a lot of these terrorist groups and these different people that are just crazy. They're being funded, like they said, during the war, the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. There was actually a group of South Americans that were caught in Iraq fighting the U.S. government. They're basically CIA puppets, and they were basically inserted in there to just cause chaos. These people weren't even Muslim or Middle Eastern. It's crazy.
Yep. Hey, welcome, Ian. Assalamu alaikum, man. How you doing today?
Alaikum salam. Long time. How are you?
Doing good. We had some people here from South Sudan, man. One person kept on supporting Israel. I gave him facts and data. I told him, I said 2012, they kicked out asylum seekers, or hundreds of families out of Israel. You know?
South Sudan is not surprising. Yeah, those people are extraordinarily disciplined.
He'll hop in here. He does not have any self-respect. He acts like his name is Ghetto. You'll see him probably in Mahdi's room as well.
Idiot.
So, Doctor, why do they support the Israeli government if they know they're wrong? South Sudanese people, they should know.
Hey, what's up, Sai? If you want to come on up, or anybody else, just unmute, come on up. Assalamu alaikum, welcome, guys.
South Sudanese people.
Do they have an issue with just like governments that are led by Muslims, or what is their issue with the Palestinian people?
South Sudanese?
Yeah, the South Sudanese, because a lot of them support Israel.
They don't have an issue with they don't have an issue with people. They're a puppet. They're independents to Israel, so they're just a support. So that whole state is a whole puppet state. That's why they fought for their independence against us so hard for so long, and when they got it, and they became one of the poorest
countries. Yeah, but man, that lets me know, bro, that this shit is all like man-made. These governments that want independence and stuff like that. Sudan was a very powerful country, not just in Africa, but just in the region as a whole. For them to have a huge portion of their land just be divided and a whole new country created, I think that was foreign powers, man. Because you could never do that to a country like the United States.
Same thing with the gold in Sudan. We have gold sanctioning because we allegedly supported 9/11 terrorists. So because we allegedly supported 9/11 terrorists, then they put that sanction. But that sanction was more so to destabilize us militarily, because once they had their treaties with Egypt, they had no other major threats in the region other than Sudan. Because Sudan is like North Sudan, we're extraordinarily against science. If we had military capability, we would be probably in Gaza, along with Iran and Hezbollah and the other different organizations, or we would send our own proxy groups. But they destabilized us 20 plus years ago when they took our number one export. Then our other exports, our agricultural exports that make the country money, most of those were out of South Sudan. They created division between North Sudan and South Sudan by way of religion, because they try to say South Sudanese are Christian, but the majority of South Sudanese are traditionalists. They're animists. They are like nature worshippers, pagans. So they try to create that division between the two of us. We actually won the Civil War both times in 1989 and in 2011, but the United Nations did an overwhelming vote and decided that South Sudan could stay anyway.
That's crazy. That is crazy. Yeah. Look at that. And I'm pretty sure Sudan as a government, Sudan and Libya were doing really well. Compared to most countries just within the region, I feel like they were doing really well. And militarily, they were powerful. It's the same with our country. Like in the 70s, we fought with Ethiopia because they openly supported Zionism. And then at one point, they said they were communists. And half of our land is stolen by Ethiopia, so we went to war with them. The U.S. played both sides, gave us weapons, and then took all the weapons away from us. They gave it to Ethiopia, and then we drove to their capital, and we started getting bombed. And so I feel like any government that opposes Western values and or is a threat to Israel will be destroyed. If it's an Islamic country, for sure. That's what people need to realize. I feel like that's the number one thing that people should educate themselves on. That the Middle East, that entire region, all the way to North Africa to East Africa, was controlled at one point by just one major Islamic power, like for centuries. So I don't think they want that to happen again.
The Israelis are playing a long chess game, and a lot of people are focused on the West Bank. But one of Israel's number one assets that they want control over is the Suez Canal. So destabilizing Sudan, demilitarizing Jordan the way they did already, and then trying to make quote-unquote allies with Egypt. All these moves is for the greater Israeli plan. So once they finish off with Gaza, then the next move is for the Suez Canal. If they control the Suez Canal, then they control global trade in the entire region.
30%. Yes, 30% of all trade coming from Asia, particularly oil, and Iran's oil coming from the Strait of Hormuz is gonna end up going through the Suez Canal.
And that's Saudi is making good chess moves as well, because Saudi has their quote unquote Vision 2030, but Saudi's being very strategic. Instead of them investing in Riyadh or Jeddah, cities that are already developed, they're investing. All the new cities that Saudi is building is on the Red Sea coast, all the way north at the tip where that is. They have a project called the Octagon, which is supposed to be a seaport, one of the world's largest seaport cities that's going to be built right there to try to help keep a Muslim presence or a Muslim statehood present in the region. I think it's also going to be proxy for military.
I have to disagree with that. The Saudis are puppets. They're controlled by Israel and the United States. They're propped up. They're the most graceful government probably in the last 300 years for Muslims. They're absolute disgrace. They are openly hostile towards Iran.
I mean,
And yet, their fellow Arab Muslim brothers in Gaza and the West Bank, which aren't too far from them, the neighboring, there may be one country in between them. They're being destroyed every day, and they have an economic treaty, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I believe that the Saudi government, not the people, Saudi government and the Israeli government work together. So I believe they're puppets.
I extraordinarily disagree. Saudi is not a puppet of Israel. Saudi doesn't have any reason to be a puppet of Israel. But the Saudi approach to Israeli issue is just different than what most people in that situation. I definitely see him in that situation. I definitely see financial moves that have been made. I'm here currently. I see financial moves that have been made, and I see strategic moves that have been made, slow pace, not aggressive moves. As far as Iran, the conflict between Saudis and Iran historically predate vastly predate even the state of Israel's foundation. But I get your point, and I hear that argument a lot. It's relevant, but I don't think it's reality.
It is.
Like I said,
it is.
Saudis.
They're openly, again, they're
Yeah, but
openly
you would have to
advocating for war.
Yeah, but you would have to go
Islamic
beyond.
government, and
I
they're
hear you, but you would have to go
supporting.
Yeah, but you would have to go beyond the tabloids. Like I said, I'm talking about strategic military base setups.
Yeah, there's about at least like 4 military, U.S. military bases
No, I'm not
in
talking
Saudi
about
Arabia,
I'm talking about
where F-16s take off and bomb other Muslim countries.
That's not what I'm
Saudis
talking
are a complete
You're not
disgrace. They're a complete
You're not
disgrace.
listening. Like I said, if you have to go beyond tabloid and understand what Saudi government is actually doing, not what the U.S. is doing through Saudi, because the U.S. is inside every single country in the region. So that's irrelevant. The point is what Saudi is doing militarily, and what they're doing militarily is they've been setting up new bases just for themselves all the way north of the Red Sea coast to in between Jordan and a bridge between Egypt. They're even building a bridge. They have a bridge that they're building called the Musa something bridge that's gonna connect Masr to Saudi, south of.
Brother,
Say again.
can I just reply to Dr. Doctor? I believe that I mean, you made some great points, but that is a cop-out. Having economic ties, they're basically openly supporting Israel in genocide, and then they aren't taking any action with the U.S. They aren't putting pressure through economic structure. If they wanted to, if the Saudis wanted to, with the amount of oil they have, with them leading OPEC, they would say, hey, we're going to move towards BRICS. The U.S. has to cut at least 20 to 30%.
Saudi they already did that.
Yeah, but it took them how long? With all of it took them how long to say, hey, we're going to go to BRICS if America does not stop openly.
It didn't take them a long time to go to. First of all, it didn't take them a long time to go to BRICS. Second of all, BRICS, as far as its organization structure for exactly what it wants to do, is relatively new. BRICS didn't start catching its heat and momentum until the war between Russia and Ukraine, and then when America started putting financial sanctions on Russia's trade, that's when Russia joined BRICS, and then BRICS became a real thing, because it's like, okay, if we need major superpowers invested, Saudi Arabia is $1 trillion country, so you're not going to get their attention just by having a couple broke countries say, hey, we're angry.
Yeah, but I mean, their economy isn't diverse at all, and they know they're gonna go broke eventually if they rely too much on because think about this.
And that's
Venezuela
is for them to spend their money on
Venezuela.
People up.
No.
Strategic.
No, they need to strategically put pressure on the countries. Well, that's if they are Islamic government. They aren't. So I mean, they aren't infallible.
But they're not in a position to do that.
They absolutely are. Turkey's been doing that. Turkey has been displaying soft power. They've been displaying
more power. Turkey is much more powerful than Saudi's government. Massively more powerful.
Brother,
and more and a stronger reputation and more control on trade, energy. Like, what are you talking about? I don't think you understand the geopolitics.
I think the thing is, you support Mohammed bin Salman and the Saudi government, which again, it's your choice. But a sellout is a sellout, brother. You're arguing with reality. Reality says that this government is openly supporting genocide. They're openly supporting genocide.
It's not reality. It's just your lack of knowledge. It's not about supporting anyone or reality.
So Saudi Arabia is shooting down missiles headed towards Israel.
Brother, am I allowed to finish this sentence?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's not about supporting Mohammed bin Salman, and it's not about any of the things you just said. It's about understanding what the Saudi position. And I think a lot of Muslims, what happens is they take, for some reason, they tend to forget that the House of Saud is the royal family of Saudi Arabia, not the kings of Islam. So that people confuse that, and they make it look like, oh, look, these people are somehow different than any other Muslim country in the world who's also standing with their hands, with their either dick in their hand. So that same argument can be made for multiple other nations. If you're talking about Turkey is vastly powerful and more wealthy. The Saudi government is not the kings of Islam. They're the kings of their people and their country. Just so happens that Mecca is in their country. But based on the position that they're in, both financially, people make it look like they have unlimited wealth. They have a massive amount of limited wealth. They have one of the weakest militaries in the entire region, and they are one of the most American dependent on military support. So a military campaign from Saudi is completely out of the question. Not to mention, as soon as the war in Gaza is over, and even before it began, a gun is at Saudi's head from Iran anyway. So teaming up with Iran to do much of anything is rare. The Iranian government has been calling for the fall of all Islamic kingdoms, all Arab kingdoms that are unrelated to the religion of Islam. So that's not necessarily an ally. As far as Palestinian people, Mohammed bin Salman has already made a statement that his interest is on the progression of his country, and his country is below the majority of his country is below the age of 35, and their interest, the people's interest of Saudi Arabia, is on the interest of the freedoms of Palestine.
Okay,
so he said he will support in this match. But you have to make moves that you can make. People on the internet just call for missiles to fly.
I didn't call for missiles. Again, I will repeat what I said earlier.
Tell me exactly,
you can project soft power. No, this is all Saudi Arabia has to do. They don't necessarily have to give an ultimatum, but with their strategic, because they have one of the best resources in the world, which is oil. Strategically, they can enforce a certain amount of accountability towards the U.S. and Israel. Yes, they can. They're one of the few governments. That actually gets leeway from the U.S. Libya did it. The majority of those governments.
So I want to say this one thing, brother. Doctor, when did you become a doctor, man? And second question is, didn't the U.S., the Saudi Arabia did do the retaliation in 1973? Control the oil, whatnot, doctor?
That was during King Faisal. But what I'm trying to say is this: that if you control water and the rest of the world is thirsty, by saying I'm going to leverage my power on water, that doesn't make people bend the knee. That makes people kill you. This is not fucking monopoly.
Man,
right?
No, but the oil, they can raise the price in the oil, right?
They can strategically position
they've done it before.
Yes, Amir, brother, you're 100% right.
Amir,
Why?
what happened to the Saudi king?
Hey, doctor, you have to let people talk, because I want to.
Yeah, he got assassinated, right? But the doctor, they tried to do it during Biden administration. Nothing happened. You see what I'm saying? And I don't know if you know about the Biden administration, right? It urged Saudi Arabia to increase oil production, but guess what? They actually cut down the oil. You see what I'm saying? And what I'm saying is, it's possible. Look, doctor, this was my plan, right? When the 7th of October happened, and Saudi Arabia and all of these GCC countries, they knew from the jump that what's happening to Palestinians is wrong at so many levels, right?
Excuse me,
what they could have done.
This is Morty.
Yeah, one second. Morty, one second, please, brother. So, doctor, my thing is, my whole plan was from the jump after 7th of October, get together. I know they hate each other. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, all of these GCC countries, they hate each other. They could have got together on the table, right? And said all together collectively, look, we're not going to buy any arms, and the oil business is, we're going to stop it just for the time being until this problem is resolved.
That's facts. That's projecting soft power.
Hang on, two, brother, hang on. And they could have done that, right? All of them, because back then it was just one country, right? Now, in today's world, they could have done that for the time being. That would have pressurized Biden. Biden would have to be like, tell Netanyahu, shut the fuck up, give them the state, and that's it, move on. So we could, have the oil supply, because we only get 7% of the oil in America from Saudi Arabia. It would have hit the global market. And it's a dangerous move for everybody, right? It would hit the whole market. All I'm saying, they could have done some of this shit, but they didn't.
100% right. That's how you project soft power without taking military action. The UAE, along with all other Gulf countries, have a lot of influence in the region. The U.S. and Israel can never overcome the fact that these countries are strategically important to their region. So you can't come in and just force people because you have a bigger government. The world doesn't work like that. If they get together as a collective and they take a stance, by them taking a stance and not firing a single bullet, they're gonna hold they're gonna make an even bigger impact on the situation in Palestine.
What collective? The Muslim countries?
Yes, the Muslim collective. Yes, they're all Muslim
It doesn't
governments.
work that way. You have to build it up, and they're like, there is a whole bunch of influence and a whole bunch of destruction in the education system that's been built in
I don't think.
the whole scenario.
I don't think
Muslim and Muslim.
I don't think the Gulf countries are uneducated. I think the Gulf countries are
The
some of the
Gulf
most
countries
educated countries.
is nothing but a makeover for the colonizer client state in the region.
Yeah, they're puppets. I said that earlier.
It's
They're
not
I know they're
a
puppets.
puppet.
They're
No,
puppets.
no. It's not puppets. It's the steps. So you getting colonized. Mecca didn't get colonized because it would get an uproar over the region from the beginning.
I thought this was
What do you
Doctor.
mean?
No, go ahead. Finish with you.
What I'm saying is that Saudi from the beginning, nobody was gonna conquer it because it will evoke a whole bunch of craziness going around the region. It was never conquered. That's why the placement of a Muslim country because of the shrines or because of the haram, and then a Jewish country in Palestine, and then a Christian country in Lebanon. This was the movement after decolonization from the land. So by doing this, it's all connected. Lebanon the way it is, Saudi the way it is, the Jewish state as a Jewish state.
Listen,
So for them to play into the balance of power, they have to move according to the time frame.
I don't know exactly what you mean by that. But like I said,
What I mean
these
is that
the countries
at some
in OPEC,
point-
the countries in OPEC, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain, and these countries, they're very wealthy in natural
not about
resources.
wealth.
And then also, again, Saudi Arabia. But look. They have an influence in their region. They're very strategic.
No, they don't.
They are basically they're countries that are third world. That's what you're saying. They're weak countries
It's not
that
that
have
they're third
zero.
world. It's not that they're third world. They're just extraordinarily American dependent.
Have they ever been bombed? Saudi
Let
Arabia
me just
never
finish the
been
sentence.
bombed.
Can I just finish the sentence?
Oh,
Can I just
They
finish the
wouldn't
sentence?
get
Alright,
bombed
let me just-
because they are
let me just
under the
finish-
coverage of America
Let me
from
just-
the day one.
Let me just finish a very short sentence. The reason why they're not third world because they have the money to make it look pretty, but they have not released colonial control. That's the point. That's what they're trying to do in the middle of this conflict. That's what the growth of all these mega cities are. That's what all this investment is about. It's about releasing colonial control. Of course, they're not going to get bombed. Just like Qatar is not going to respond to Iran dropping missiles on them because they can't. Doesn't matter how much wealth you have, they're still technically under colonial control and influence. They're just a pretty colonial country. They're trying to relinquish that through without using oil dependence. By using oil as a threat is only going to result in bodies and destabilizing their government because America and other countries are not going to let you say, oh, we're going to take 30+% of the world's oil reserve and freeze it over a conflict. No one's trying to hear that shit. And when they do things like that, it only creates larger and larger problems. They're trying to do strength by peace. That's what the GCC countries have been trying to do.
Yes, but also it's a bullshit.
These guys are the
They are.
the way you explain what's going on right now is you just giving a cop out to the Gulf countries, but that's okay. That's your opinion.
It's not.
They
It's not like that.
are in a position to make a difference.
They are not.
Do not tell me that the Saudi government, UAE, Saudi Aramco.
They
Look
are
up how.
not in a
Okay.
position.
Look up how much
It's a
they're.
freaking money launder, prostitution invoked, freaking.
I don't even know what point she's making, Doctor. I understand your point, but I don't know.
See, they did do it in the Biden administrations. They asked Saudi Arabia to produce more oil, and they did not do it.
Yes.
Right.
Joe Biden didn't ask him to do that. He said in an
Yes.
interview right
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. You're trying to cover for Joe Biden. Yes, he
I'm
did.
not trying to cover.
So-
No, Joe Biden works for us. We want gas prices high so
So,
we can foreclose on American homes.
I will read you out the statement. The Biden administration urged Saudi Arabia to increase oil production to lower global prices after the Ukraine war disrupted markets. In response, Saudi Arabia and OPEC, including Russia, did the opposite. They cut oil production, citing market stability.
Thank you.
Joe Biden
So
claimed
He just
that he
proved
did
the point
not.
right now. He just
And hang on. The U.S. officials were angry, accusing the kingdom of siding with Russia. Biden even warned of consequences, but no major policy change followed. Saudi Arabia Minister Abdulaziz bin Salman famously said, "We're not a school child that you can lecture." So all I'm saying is, it's possible. But the thing, I think Dr. and Z are arguing, no, it's not possible. They did do it under Biden administration.
They wouldn't do
You
it
guys
for
talking about-
Palestine. They do it for
It doesn't matter, Z, it doesn't matter. They've done it.
Okay.
That premise was never my point. And what you just read is not what you're asking them to do. What you're asking them to do is leverage their oil resources in military conflict. One of the longest standing military conflicts of the modern world. That's completely different than what Joe Biden was calling for.
Doctor, they
I disagree again. I
73.
disagree with that, but I mean,
No, you
to
disagree
each his
with
own.
everything.
To each his own. No, I don't disagree with everything you said. You know why? One of the things you said, you actually made a great point. You said that their economy is not diverse. I'm 100%. I understand that they rely too much on oil, and they're gonna end up like Venezuela eventually if they don't diversify their economy. Also, you said there's other countries that are in the region that need to be held accountable just as much as Saudi Arabia. You're 100% right on that. So it's not all on Saudi Arabia as far as stopping Israel, but with influence, every country, doesn't matter how poor or how little it is, it holds
Let me ask you a question.
influence.
Which country in the Middle East has the strongest military?
That would be, of course, Israel. I mean, do you consider Israel? Israel
It's
is
actually
basically
Egypt. It's actually Egypt. Everyone's screaming at Saudi Arabia, and Egypt has the most powerful, most modern military, and has the least American militarily influence. And they're a military-controlled state. Their president is a general. So
I don't know. I think Egypt's a joke. Egypt's military is a joke.
Saudis have been buying.
They've been buying weapons, F-16, F-15s for a long time.
Turkey has the strongest military.
Yeah, Turkey has the strongest military. He's
Let's
100%
get
right.
Morty in there. I think let's hear from a Zionist perspective. Go on, Morty, because we don't want to silence Morty. Morty, let's hear you out as well. We don't want to silence a Zionist.
My PTR, I asked Google if Joe Biden asked Saudi Arabia to increase oil production. He did not.
He did.
AI over.
He did.
He said he did not. And in an interview after he returned from Saudi Arabia, he was asked, President Biden, did you ask Saudi to increase oil production? He smiled and he said, no, I did not ask them to increase oil production.
Of course he's gonna say that when Saudi doesn't listen. But who runs Google? Just asking.
Okay, Joe Biden does not want low oil prices for Americans. Okay, he wants high oil prices. Why? Because he works for us. What do we want? We want to own all the American homes. Okay, when gas prices are high for Americans, makes it very hard for Americans to pay their mortgages. What happens when they can't pay their mortgages? We foreclose. Okay? So, I think it's about time everybody stops talking turkey in this room and starts getting down to brass tacks. Okay?
I agree with that part.
Thank you.
Because you guys are just screaming that Turkey is the most powerful in the Middle East. Turkey's not even in the Middle East. Again, Egypt has the most powerful military in the Middle East, yet no one's and they're the closest.
Even Egypt is not in the Middle East, right, Doctor?
Egypt is a majority in North Africa.
If you type in Egypt is considered militarily part of the Middle Eastern militaries. And it's well known that Egypt has the most powerful military in the Middle East. They're also the closest to Israel. Yet you guys are whining on Saudi Arabia, which has one of the weakest military.
It's because of Egypt went already and got the 1970s.
Yes.
Which is the one
I think Morty is whining about Saudi Arabia.
I'm not whining about Saudi Arabia. I appreciate that Saudi Arabia did that.
He was whining about Biden right now.
Yes, I know.
Listen,
I'm celebrating Joe
Turkey-
Biden. I'm celebrating Biden and Saudi.
Turkey and Egypt aren't calling for war against Iran openly, just on any occasion. Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries just constantly want war with another government, but yet they have a country on their border right next to them that's openly just killing their fellow citizens, their fellow Muslims, their fellow Arabs. Any way you look at it, there's no excuse.
I thought the problem was with Israel. If the problem
The problem is with Israel.
Okay, so if the problem is with Israel, and I just pointed out who has the strongest military and who's strategically the closest to Israel,
Dude,
you jump back to Saudi Arabia.
Again,
Yes, Saudi Arabia is calling for war against Iran. They need to turn their attention to the real enemy. not this
Again.
fake propaganda. Again, if this country is a Shiite country, oh well,
Saudi
I'm a
Arabia
Sunni.
and Iran
I'm
have
a
been
Sunni,
having
brother. Listen, respectfully, I'm a Sunni. I don't even know what Shiites believe, to be honest with you. And I really don't understand their belief system too well. But at the end of the day, this is a person that is Muslim. So if we are going to claim we're an Islamic government and or republic, any one of these countries, it's not just Saudi Arabia. We can't just blame.
That's the problem. You're
So Saudi is just a regular country, so they're a secular country.
Listen, the Saudi government
making
does
that
not
claim?
claim. I'm not making a claim. I'm speaking facts. The Saudi government does not claim to be an Islamic regime as Iran does. The Saudi government.
Hey, Amir, do you believe that?
Haram for the longest.
Yeah,
The Saudi government does not claim to be
Had
an
it
Islamic.
Hey, does any-
for the longest
that
time,
not-
doctor.
Does anyone believe that Saudi Arabia claims to be secular?
Yeah, let's get new wisdom there. We got a hang on, we got a Palestinian on the stage. Jindib, Jindib, what's your take, brother? Go on.
I don't know, doctor is claiming Saudi Arabia to be an Islamic country or an Islamic government.
I said Saudi Arabia does not claim to be an Islamic regime. They're just a royal family that controls.
I disagree. I disagree. Mecca and
Okay,
Medina are there.
No, it's a fact. It's a fact. The Saudi government is not an Islamic government.
The laws are about the Sharia law.
Sure. Yeah, why would they have Sharia law if they don't believe in Islam? So they can say whatever they want.
They're an Islamic state run by Sharia law.
Islamic state, regardless whether they want to claim it or not. That's exactly what they are.
I'm just glad to see more here.
Earth has Sharia law.
It's good to see you too.
You can't drink alcohol, you can't fornicate, you can't do all that. So yeah, there's no responsibilities about that. That's
Yeah,
people by default makes it Islamic state.
people follow the Sharia in Saudi Arabia. That's 100% right. Women
There is no other
have to
law in
wear
Saudi Arabia.
What you guys are failing to understand is, I clearly stated the government. Just because majority of a country is Muslim does not mean that the government claims to be. I'm from Sudan. Sudan does not claim to be an Islamic regime, meaning they don't make every single decision on the country based on the Quran. Neither does Saudi Arabia, neither does the UAE. However, the majority of the people are Muslim and they cater to those people. Saudi hasn't been an Islamic regime since the 1970s. You guys really don't know what you're talking
There's
about.
a
And
big
this guy
difference between the monarchy and the republic.
Well, you're giving a cop out. At the end of the day, well, if they don't claim to be an Islamic, you keep giving them cop outs on everything. So it's a good excuse for a government that failed. They failed the Palestinian people. That's all I care about. They're openly calling for war. They failed them. They are. They're from basically Palestinian people. Palestinian people are Arabs. And they're majority. No. Listen. Since you're saying that they aren't, we're not going to even put religion into this. They're Arabs, and it's
into your politics. You're from Eritrea, right?
You don't. No, I'm not from Eritrea. You're from Sudan. I am from Somalia, brother. I'm not Eritrean. I do support.
Okay, you're from Somalia. So does Somalians when Sudan right now we're in a civil war. Imagine if I started yelling at your government about why you guys are not helping us destroy the Janjaweed.
We don't even understand the politics in Sudan, so we can't speak on that. But what I do understand, I've done my research. I've had family who lived in Saudi Arabia for over 30 years.
Why isn't your government helping us? We're East African. You're East African. Our ancestors were probably related.
We've been in an even longer civil war than Sudan. Your civil war started 20 years ago. So we actually we're trying to rebuild right now.
But there is such thing as having your own problems and navigating it as such.
You're giving Saudi Arabia a cop-out. That's the problem. They're not the only government that does this. When it comes
the problem is that you're trying to make Saudi Arabia an Islamic regime just because the population is Muslim and they're not.
Okay, man, that's your opinion. At the end of the day, we're just gonna agree to disagree. This is not going anywhere. But
You made a policy of some.
no, I just I have.
What Sadat did, and they
So let me tell you why I strongly speak on Saudi Arabia. I have at least 2 or 3 family members that lived in 2 Gulf countries. I haven't personally. I grew up in America, so I can't say I have lived there. But what I'm saying is, I have someone in my family that spent 30+ years living in a Gulf country, understanding the law, the culture, the history, and is also a scholar as far as the deen goes. So I am getting first-hand knowledge from someone that is well qualified to speak on this subject. More than qualified.
Because they live there. Okay.
No,
So,
not just
again,
because they live there, but because they're not only educated on the politics in the country, but they're the day to day. They understand everything. This is a very well educated person.
I still don't understand what this conversation is about. So when it's
that Saudi is not.
I'm saying this. I am saying that the Saudi government and majority of these Gulf countries have failed in helping the Palestinian people. That's all I care about.
okay,
They're being
okay,
bombed,
that's-
and they need to
that's
put
okay.
pressure on Israel. That's it. That's all I care about. I don't care about what they do in their. None of that matters. All of these countries need to support the Palestinian people because not only is their population majority
But
Muslim,
you know,
but
but you know that the decisions of those governments is not in their hands, right? When it comes
yeah,
to
they are puppets. So you're right. You're 100% right.
Can I say something really quickly?
Please, someone, anyone.
So, Doctor, I don't really understand what you mean by Islamic regime because this doesn't make any sense. King Salman, right? He literally said in 2015 during his inaugural speech, like, our constitution is the book of God and the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we remain committed to the pure Islamic creed. And then in 2017, when he addressed the Shura Council, he said that the government of Saudi Arabia will continue to adhere to Islamic Sharia, which is the basis of its establishment and its constitution. And even like MBS, right, like the Crown Prince, he has like multiple interviews. Like during his interview with Al Arabia, he was like, "We will not move a single inch away from our teachings of Islam. Our Islam is our constitution, and we will continue on the path of true Islam, not extremism," like something along those lines, right? There's so many quotes in modern day saying, like literally affirming that Saudi Arabia claims to follow the Quran, the Sunnah, and claims to be an Islamic theocracy. So what do you mean by Islamic regime?
Thank you. She just made a great point.
To let me respond to her. All those things you said, although they were very true, they're all before 2020. Once Mohammed bin Salman took full control over his family, because at that time he didn't have full control. Once he took full absolute control between the imprisonment and the murders of even members of his family members, and he had absolute control, all of that rhetoric changed after 2020. Once you
No,
come into
that's not
2020,
true. That's not true
Once
because in 2021 he gave an interview to Vision 2030 where he said that the kingdom was founded on Islamic principles and we will continue to develop in line with our Islamic values.
The kingdom is founded
No,
on Islamic
did you not
principles.
hear the second part of what I said? The second part of what I said was, and he said it during his Vision 2030 interview, and we will continue to develop in line with our Islamic values.
Right. And are you aware that Saudi Arabia no longer requires women to wear niqab or hijab?
Okay, first of all, there's no, hold on.
Now you're gonna debate the subject matter versus the reality.
Let me finish something.
You claimed one way.
Hold on, buddy, 1 second. You said, the first thing that you said was, Saudi Arabia does not claim to be an Islamic regime. This quote literally just affirmed that Saudi Arabia.
It does not. That's not.
Let me finish.
What you just
They
read does
claim
not
to
make
be
a
an
claim to
Islamic
be an
regime.
Islamic.
They claim to be an Islamic regime.
Yes.
Now the way that they act upon that Islamic regime is different. Okay, the way that they act upon that Islamic regime that's not what we're debating. We're debating whether Saudi Arabia calls itself an Islamic regime. They do confirm and claim themselves to be an Islamic regime.
Exactly, by every definition and their own claims to adhere to Sharia. Okay, go ahead. I'm gonna let
Number
you speak.
two, brother, let her engage
Okay,
let Doctor engage with.
So one, like I said, all of these commentary is before he got full totalitarian control over the government. After he had full control over the government, if you want to argue 2020 or 2021, you have research in front of you while I was talking to him. So whether it's 2021 or 2022, the point is after he got full totalitarian control over the government, things shifted. My argument still remains the same, regardless of what you read, because what you read did not include the words Islamic regime, that Saudi Arabia is not an Islamic regime. Yes, Saudi Arabia is a Muslim country, but to define yourself as an Islamic regime like Iran means that every single action is for the Ummah. Saudi Arabia does actions for the Saudi Arabian people. They operate like an independent nation as any other country. They put Saudi first. They even have such thing, I live here, they even have such thing called Saudiization, which is where they prioritize hiring Saudis over other people. They don't say, oh, you're a Muslim, welcome. This is the home of Muslims. They say this is the home of Saudis. This is Saudi Arabia. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked.
Look, doctor, I don't think anybody is disagreeing with you that Saudi Arabia is you know, like, the way that it is, okay? I think that, like, as Muslims, especially who live outside of Saudi, we understand that Saudi Arabia isn't in, like, the favor of most Muslims. However, that's not what we're arguing. I'm trying to argue, and I'm trying to tell you that Saudi Arabia does, whether it was during King Salman's time or during MBS's time, any of the de facto rulers claimed and to this day claim to live under an Islamic regime. If MBS were to say, if we were to come out and if you were to say that, okay, you know, Saudi Arabia is not going to be, is not an Islamic country anymore, it would spark world outrage. Okay?
That's not what I said. So
Let me finish.
But why should I let you finish rhetoric? That's not even what I said.
Hold on.
I never said that Saudi Arabia is not being an Islamic regime.
Can you please stop interrupting me? Can you
It's
please
not
stop
the same
interrupting me?
thing.
I gave you your time to speak, right? Please don't interrupt me, okay? I'm speaking. Please don't interrupt me, okay? You also mentioned, okay, so as I was saying, let me go back to what I was saying before I was very rudely interrupted. I was saying that Saudi Arabia, like any monarch of Saudi Arabia, any ruling monarch of Saudi Arabia cannot come out and say that, okay, Saudi Arabia is a country that does at this point Saudi Arabia does not follow Islamic regime. It would spark world outrage because the sanctuary of the Kaaba and the sanctuary of Mecca and any of the holy cities of Islam would be questioned. Okay, now you talked about how no, it would, because then that would mean that, okay, if Saudi Arabia is not going to be a country, look, in any of the Sharia laws, it says that the Kaaba and any of the holy cities of Islam need to be protected. If Saudi Arabia and the Saudi Arabian government were to come out and were to say that, okay, we don't follow Islamic regime, that would mean that by their constitution, by changing their bylaws, the Kaaba would be open to everybody to see. Mecca and Medina would be open to see. I do know what I'm
You just don't know what you're talking
no,
about.
I'm gonna end off with one point. Look, I'm gonna let you respond, but I'm gonna end off with one point, okay? The last point that I'm gonna end off with is you mentioned that MBS came into power in 2020, 2021. That's not true.
It's a totalitarian power.
Okay,
Whatever.
Whatever it is, okay, power, totalitarian power. He became the de facto ruler in 2019, okay? So that means that anything, and he started, let me finish, gosh, I said I'm gonna let you respond, right? So let me finish and then you can respond, okay? And otherwise, I'm gonna interrupt you when you're speaking and I don't think you're gonna like that, okay? So let me finish. In 2017, he became the de facto ruler and he started to change a lot of legislation, a lot of policies. The idea that, okay, women, get the right to drive now, the fact that women don't have to drive in niqab, it's not mandatory anymore. All of this takes time, right? So he had to spend time influencing it. Sure, maybe it came into power in 2020, 2021, but he became the de facto ruler in 2017 and actually started introducing legislation, okay? He launched a lot of reforms, and I encourage you to if you want to know like when actually he started having significant power, is to read his Vision 2030 interview that he gave, sorry?
I live here. What are you talking about?
No, I know, but I'm still encouraging you to read his interview because it actually the Vision 2030 interview actually talks about all of the legislation that he was proposing before he became, because you keep interrupting me, so if you don't interrupt me, it's going to be much shorter, okay? In Vision 2030, the interview shows all of the different policies that he was advocating for before 2021, before he took office or whatever, okay? And he became the de facto ruler in 2017, so he started changing legislation then.
Again, as I said, totalitarian rule. So anyone who's aware, we've even covered it in this house before, myself, me, and others, that some of the things that MBS did as far as holding members of his family hostage in hotels, having different writers and people who were critical of him actually murdered and assassinated, even across the global landscape. So it's a difference between coming into power and coming into totalitarian power. The Saudi family shuffles often between sons. It seems as though that MBS is not interested in a shuffle anymore, that he wants full control, especially after once his father passes on. He'll be having full control. As totalitarian power comes in, I don't know if you've heard of Qadiyah. If you have heard of Qadiyah, Qadiyah is a massive gaming project, which is anti-Islamic in almost every form of fashion. It will include casinos, gambling, and everything else. What they're trying to do here is they're trying to isolate Saudi Arabia from Mecca and Medina, as it was originally. Originally, you had the Saudi region, and then you had the Hijaz region, which had its own Islamic rules. They're trying to do the exact same thing now for the boosting of tourism and wealth. The majority of the world believes that it's so strict to be there and so harsh to be there that people don't want to have tourism. They've even built tourist sites in El Ula, which has been stated by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as a cursed region. So they're not an Islamic regime. I don't really care about global rhetoric. You're saying, oh, if they publish, that's just extremism on the subject matter. The point is they're not an Islamic regime. If they were an Islamic regime, they wouldn't be building casinos. If they were an Islamic regime, they would not be building resort sites in what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says is a cursed land that Muslims should not go to. If they were Islamic regime, they wouldn't be allowing the majority of things that are actually taking place here. The problem is most of the Saudi critics have never even been Umrah, so, or let alone Saudi at all, to see what I'm talking about. A lot of what I'm talking about is seeing. Whether my dates are correct, 2020, 2021, the point is once he took totalitarian control over his government, your quote-unquote reforms that you're talking about in his Vision 2030 is moving away from the Islamic ideology. Most people who know Saudi history know that the Saudi government was massively influenced by Wahhabism since the 1930s. That's actually how they were able to regain power, is through a lot of extremist Wahhabis who supported the Saud family in taking the region back from the previous family that ruled, divided up the state. So these extreme narratives have been unbeneficial to their government. Saudi thinks Saudi first, which is nothing wrong with that. The problem with the Muslim Ummah is the Muslim Ummah thinks Saudi is their home because Mecca is there. So they feel as though that Saudi is the king of all Arabs, which they're not. Saudi is the king of all Muslims, which they're not. And because people think that, then they have this strong criticism towards them. I don't negate that Saudi Arabia's government can potentially find more avenues in which to help Palestine. I don't negate that at all.
So, real quick question, Doctor. You live in Saudi Arabia? Is that what you said?
Let him finish. Are you finished, Doctor?
I'm almost finished.
Okay, let the brother finish.
Okay, would I be able to respond after that?
Yeah,
let him finish, please. Let him finish because we gotta pass the mic to new people as well. So Layla, I'll give you like 30 seconds and 1 minute, and then we gotta give it to 2. Go on.
Right. Like I said, I don't negate that there potentially can be more that can be done. However, based on the geopolitical position in Saudi Arabia, I totally disagree with the concept of weaponizing your only resource, the only thing that you have, weaponizing that as your line of defense. I think strength can be done through politics, through wealth exchange, like the investments in America. Now you put those investments, those trillions of dollars that the Gulf countries just put in America, now you can leverage that. Now you have power over other assets versus weaponizing your oil, which will piss off multiple countries. Now I can say, hey, I invested $3 trillion into this infrastructure. This is what the Jewish state does. The Jewish state has a lot of infrastructural investments within America, so they can destabilize America internally without having to say, oh, we're going to freeze some form of trade agreement, which is going to piss off the entire NATO, for example, just for a brand example, and then cause even greater problems with greater enemies. So I'll land there and I'll listen to Layla's rhetoric.
I mean, I agree with you. I don't think that anybody disagrees with what you're saying. I think what I'm saying is that Saudi Arabia, and this is what pisses off Muslims the most, okay? Even if you disregard Mecca and Medina or any of the holy cities for a second, right? And you just look at Saudi Arabia as a nation, one of the most wealthiest Arab nations, one of the most wealthiest Muslim nations, right? The issue that Muslims have is that Saudi Arabia calls itself an Islamic regime on multiple occasions, whether it is King Salman or MBS or whoever it is. On multiple occasions, many of the Saudi monarchs, all the way back to the 1940s, prior to the Nakba, have all stated and came out and said that they follow an Islamic regime. The issue that Muslims have is that how can a country that says that they follow Islamic regime go out and then commit these atrocities? That is what I'm trying to say. Saudi Arabia does call
Thank you
itself.
so much, man.
One second. Saudi Arabia does call itself an Islamic regime, but the way that they act upon it is not Islamic at all. That's what I'm trying to say.
So it was my turn now. Hold on, it was my turn. So, doctor, you made some good points. You said that they cannot utilize their only resource. Again, no one said Saudi Arabia needs to jump out of the window and compromise their entire security, economy, or any. What we're saying is they need to project soft power within their region. It's basically look at it this way: if you're at a company or if you're at a job, it's utilizing your own unique skill set in order to accomplish a goal. If that goal is strategic, it will improve your situation, regardless of whether you receive like a promotion or anything. You will be in a better position just based on the fact that you understand your skill set. Saudi Arabia, as a government, is currently, right now, for anyone who wants to go to Hajj, they are charging people $10,000, brother. And they have projects. The NEOM project is the one you spoke of. And the line. These are trillion-dollar projects. This isn't a poor country by any means at all. Militarily, they have been buying U.S. military hardware for over 50 years. All we are saying is this: listen, you don't need to go to war with Israel or the U.S. government. What we need you to do is we need you and the Gulf countries to step up, to take account for everything Israel is doing. Have a strategic, at least a counterbalance to economically, not necessarily militarily. They just need to take a stand against the genocide. That's the main thing. They can do that without compromising their country. You are giving excuse after excuse after excuse. I'm starting to think, Doctor, you work for the Saudi government. Well, I'm being serious. I have no issue with anyone if they are from Saudi Arabia. Oh, and by the way, there's always been for the Ummah, there's always been a love for, of course, the land of the Prophet, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
And that's the problem.
And also, look. As a whole, that is where Mecca and Medina is. So it is pretty much every Muslim's duty to defend those two cities for sure. So just look at it from everyone's point of view. You just need to take accountability.
Sure, brother. 1 second. There's two problems, right? I think maybe Layla and two. Maybe you guys don't understand how Saudi Arabia was created. It was created over Muslim dead bodies, right? They got the help from the British Empire. That's how Saudi Arabia was created.
Okay, that's facts.
You see what I'm saying? So that's a fact. They kill a bunch of people, or, by calling them grave worshippers, Ottoman Empire, whatnot. Muhammad bin Abdul Wahab, actually Al Saud was an ally, became an ally of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahab. And
Amir, you're making a great point. You're making a great point.
Yeah. All I'm saying is, I think you got to understand Doctor's point of view as well. Doctor is in Saudi Arabia right now. He can't really say much as well. You see what I'm saying? I lived over there, by the way, Doctor. You see what I'm saying? I know how it is. Okay.
That's not what's happening. That's not what's happening.
Hey, Doctor, bro, we don't want you locked up, brother. We don't want you.
No, that's not what's happening. But to your point, Amir, that's my point, that it's not an Islamic regime. That's my point. But she's talking about, does it literally state? So she wants to read off sheets of paper. I know, it doesn't kind of feel right. So you can read off sheets of paper. I'm looking at the actions. Every action here does not state Islamic regime. It states Muslim country. It states, it's just like Sudan. Sudan's not an Islamic regime. So Muslim country, the government are quote unquote Muslims, but they are not. Islamic regime is like an imam or sheikh runs your country. Like, you're expecting to hold these people in a very high religious guard. That's not what MBS is at all. Like he's just a royal, and he's Saudi. He's Saudi first, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the problem here is everyone is saying that Saudi needs to be Islam first. And again, when Saudi was more like that, people hated Saudi. People complained about Haram police. They complained about Chop Chop Square. Now Saudi's awesome, and now everyone's saying, "Oh, they need to be more strict." It's just games. But like as Amir just told y'all, if you understand the history of Saudi Arabia, then you wouldn't view it as an Islamic regime. You would review it as a royal family that took over an Islamic country, and then once they took over the Islamic country, they have progressed into their own way of doing things. Hold every Muslim country accountable to being an Islamic regime.
We kind of do, but that's a fair point. You made a great point too. That's
Layla, go on, respond.
Look, doctor, I think one of the biggest things, right, about being a Muslim in general is taking accountability, right? For me, look, we can argue and we can talk about whether, if you're a Salafi, if you're a Wahhabi, we can argue, right, day and night about if what Saudi Arabia is doing is actually Islamic or not. However, what my main point is that when you have a leader like MBS or King Salman, whoever it is, right, the ruling monarch, based off of whatever definition you want to provide, for me and for many Muslims, it's an issue when you come out and you say that, okay, this is an Islamic nation. We follow an Islamic constitution, we follow an Islamic regime, we follow Islam. And then you go out and then you don't say a single thing about Palestine and you continue to fund the genocide. Let me finish. And then you continue to fund the genocide. Okay, let me finish. I didn't interrupt you, so I don't understand why you keep interrupting me. I'm just speaking from my perspective, okay? I'm just speaking from my perspective, what I'm trying to convey to you, so I'd really appreciate if you don't interrupt me. That's really rude, okay? I'm trying to be really nice over here. So, what I'm trying to
Calm down, it's a Muslim brother.
That's why I'm trying to be really nice. Okay, he looks educated, so I'm trying to be really nice to him, but he's making it really difficult to do.
He is educated. He's a doctor.
Stop interrupting me, doctor. Listen to me, okay? As I was saying, right? How are you going, if you're going to call yourself an Islamic nation, which I've provided multiple interviews where they have, modern, present, 10 years ago, now present, in the last few years, you're going to come out and you're going to say that, okay, we're an Islamic nation, and you're not going to say a single thing about Palestine, but you're going to actively fund the genocide. You're going to do all of these things, right? So it's about taking accountability, because then there's another side to the coin that you have to understand. Now what's happening is that people have this perception about Arab nations. As a student organizer and as somebody who works very closely with pro-Palestinian non-Muslim organizers, the very most common question that they get is, oh my gosh, why aren't your Muslim nations, why aren't your Muslim countries speaking out against the genocide? And Saudi Arabia is one of the very first countries that comes into topic, because for the longest time we were told to believe that Saudi Arabia is the epitome of an Islamic nation, whether that is in your American school textbooks or whether that is in Western propaganda. That's why this whole narrative that, okay, Sharia law beheads, people for, having sex or whatever, this is a whole thing, it's a whole stereotype that's been pushed by countries like Saudi Arabia. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that part of being Muslim, right, and then also part of being just a decent human being is just to making sure that your leaders are taking accountability for their actions. If you're going to call something an Islamic regime, if you're going to come out and you're going to say that, okay, we follow an Islamic constitution, and by the way, those words were never taken back. If MBS wanted to say, okay, now we're going to build casinos and stuff, why did he never speak out and say, oh, we don't follow the Islamic constitution anymore? So what I'm trying to say, and I'll keep it short now, is it's about taking accountability. It's about making your leaders take accountability for their actions. If they're going to say that if their country is an Islamic regime, then make sure that they're following an Islamic regime. That's what I'm trying to say.
Can I just say one thing, Amir? She made a great point, mashallah.
I think Doctor wanted to.
I won't even, Doctor, I'm not even going to respond to your point. No, I just want to kind of elaborate on what she said. That was a great point.
He knows what she said.
I'm not really a doctor though, so I just want you to.
No, I know, but it was Doctor's turn. Come on, now you can respond afterwards. Let Doctor
She said it's totally wrong on multiple levels. She said our government, our king and royal family here have to take accountability. She said that Saudi Arabia hasn't said anything. That's absolutely wrong. MBS in the very beginning, in September 2018, war started October 7th, he stated that Saudi Arabia will not recognize Israel without Palestine being a recognized state as a complete country. This is what, and he's made numerous of statements on the. I mean, I'm surprised that any person following this could even say this. Saudi Arabia says. Saudi Arabian prince also said. He said he doesn't care. He said he doesn't care about the difficulties of the Palestinian issue. He tried to make this a headline as if he would say he didn't care about Palestine. In his full statement, he don't care about all the intimate details of the Palestinian issue. Saudi Arabia is not doing business with Israel without Palestine getting its statehood. That's what he has leveraged most of this time. MBS on November 11th called it a genocide. He called Israel a genocide against Palestine and the operations in Lebanon. These are news outlets. I'm surprised that in all your university research, freshmen, you haven't done this. You haven't pulled this up. Saudi Arabia, it's like 1,000 of them here. He said he won't normalize any relations. He won't normalize any relations with Israel at all. This was done in December. No relations will be normalized between Israel and Saudi Arabia unless Palestine gets an independent state. His statements have been consistent and frequent. That not only does he want the war, if he could have said, I just want the war to end, I just want people to stop dying, like Donald Trump said, he said he wants Palestine to be its own independent state, its own independent country. He said that 1,000 times. However, the problem and the confusion, the part that no one's seeming to understand is that Saudi Arabia is not the royal family of all Muslims. They're the royal family of Saudi Arabia. So America puts Americans first. Mexico puts Mexicans first. Saudi Arabia puts Saudi Arabians first. You guys keep speaking as if Saudi Arabia is the government of Palestine, as if these are two independent countries. And Netanyahu made remarks against MBS in response. And his remark back to MBS was, why don't you let Palestinians move to Saudi Arabia? And Muslims got mad at him for saying no. Why won't he let them? The whole point is controlling that strategic point. I'm not going to move Palestinians in a mass populace. Layla, I let you finish. I see the unmute button. Right? I'm not going to move the mass population of Palestinians into Saudi Arabia, because if I move them into Saudi Arabia, then you relatively lost Palestine, and then Palestinians over time would just become Saudi Arabians, the way a lot of Palestinian migrants into Egypt have become basically Egyptians. So, and they, because they have that, I forgot, Amiri, what's the name of that law that the Israelis have? That if you leave, you can't come back. Don't they have a?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah, if you leave, then you can come back to your homeland. But then they have it where if Israeli people anywhere on earth can come there at any given point in time and get full citizenship without even taking a DNA test. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, can I respond now?
Hey, real quick, let me just say one thing real quick. It's quite interesting when you have a country that has the Holy Land for this particular faith, and then you have this Nubian guy coming with all of these excuses when you have a kuffar nation like South Africa has to be the one that brings Israel to the ICC and ICJ. And he's going to sit here and act as if that's okay. But yeah, if you got like kuffars not supporting, he will lambast them. He will talk about how they don't have humanity. But when it comes to the Holy Land, oh, it's for Saudis and Saudis first. I can't stand people like this. You're mad inconsistent. And you clearly have a bias. And you lead with an agenda. So I'm just going to land there. Carry on, sister.
Okay. So basically, Doctor, okay, do you want to talk about me only, using sources on paper? Sure. Saudi Arabia only does not recognize Israel on paper. Sure, they go into news outlets and they say that, okay, or they release official statements where they say that they don't recognize Israel. However, their actions speak otherwise. There are so many economic engagement like opportunities, like, you know, and coalitions that are built between Israel and Saudi Arabia that maybe you're not aware of. The number one being the Saudi Public Investment Funds. It's reportedly involved in investments in Israeli companies via private equity. There's I don't know the exact number, but I believe it's like $3 billion that is managed by the Jared Kushner Affinities Partners, which is backed by Israeli startups. There's also this one other example. I think it's called like Solar Edge or something, or like Solar Power, or whatever. And it's an Israeli firm that has a joint virtue with a Riyadh-based company called Ajlan and Bros, which is owned, by the way, by the Saudi government, and it's used to develop renewable energy projects that align with, again, the Vision 2030. So there's also strategic corridor planning, like the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, which is a large-scale infrastructure initiative that links Saudi Arabia, Israel, and other countries in energy, logistics, and technology corporations. There's also so many diplomatic and security preconditions, and so many diplomatic and security conversations, such as the normalization of this whole plan depends on Palestinian statehood, meaning that Saudi Arabia is only going to come out and say something once Palestine gets statehood, not during the process, not during the genocide, not during when there's a need for a call for a ceasefire. They're only going to call for Palestinian statehood. They're only going to, whatever Palestinian statehood looks like, whether it's a two-state solution or one-state solution, they're only going to come out and support it when it happens. So being one of the largest and biggest and most well-funded Muslim countries out there, they're not going to support it anytime during the ongoing genocide and during the ongoing occupation. So I could talk on and on about, like, I could give you a whole report on how, even though on paper Saudi Arabia says that they don't remain ties with Israel, in the back end there's so much that is being done, which is honestly the main reason why Saudi Arabia has not come out and has not called for a ceasefire, has not come out and said that we recognize Palestinian statehood. They're only going to do it when the genocide or when the occupation is over, which then at that point is like, what's even the point, you know? Because where were you during almost 80 years of occupation? You didn't say a single word. So it's like, sure, you know, like whatever you're saying is correct, but in terms of theoretical strategy or like Muslim morality, it doesn't make any sense and it's completely wrong.
Right, so let me go ahead and educate you freshmen on business 101.
Don't call me a freshman.
So,
I'm not a freshman. Don't be disrespectful to me. I wasn't disrespectful to you.
Whatever you want to call it. Amir knows me well, so he knows that business is like my forte in economics. Right? Let me explain everything that you just said. You said it out loud but didn't understand. The only way to control an individual is to be an investor. Otherwise, you're going to do what two is calling for, which is the flying of missiles. So the more financial aid that I put into a nation, I'm able to also destabilize a nation. For example, China. China owns massive amounts of the United States stock market. If China and America got in a real conflict, China wouldn't have to shoot a missile. All they would have to do is sell all their shares, tank the American economy, and the whole system collapses. Saudi Arabia weaponized its money the exact same way. So when you see business relationships between Saudi Arabia and Israel, it doesn't mean we're buddies. It means I'm buying equity and controlling positions within your financial government. I'm controlling or buying into your economy. And once I buy into your economy, same thing with Saudi Arabia and the Gulf nations giving America $10 trillion, or some people say $3 trillion, whatever, between the two. With giving massive amounts of money, that doesn't mean I'm your friend. That means that I'm your debt holder. The same way China is a debt holder of the United States, these other countries are saying, I have to get strong by having major investment within. Then I can leverage by withdrawing. You said Saudi Arabia doesn't recognize Palestine as a state. Saudi Arabia has been recognizing Palestine as a state since the beginning of time. So I don't see how that's relevant.
No, that is pretty
You also made commentary. I don't know. Make up your mind. You also made commentary about the about what they say out in public, but it's not what it is behind closed doors. Which is exactly was my argument about the Islamic regime when you read those newspapers. But I said, in reality, for a person living in Riyadh, like myself, I moved here a few months ago, a person living in Riyadh, or for in reality, for any person who's been to Saudi Arabia and knows Saudi Arabia, knows that this is not an Islamic regime. There's nothing Islamic here other than, unless you view Islam as clothes and perfume. But beyond clothes and perfume here, this is not the Saudi Arabia that my father visited in the 70s. So the reality of the situation is not true. Saudi Arabia, Vision 2030, and many of the other Arab nations are, when they say they're moving towards modernization, when they're promoting Islamic leniency, then that's not Islamic regime. That's not how an Islamic regime is ran. We have exemplary examples in the religion of Islam of what an Islamic regime looks like. It's called a caliphate, right? And anything other than those examples is not an Islamic regime. If you're not running your country with a caliphate, then you can't say you're an Islamic regime. You can say you're a regime who practice Islam. But if you say you're an Islamic regime, then you're just keeping up the tradition, the same way America does for the multitude of them. Maintaining certain traditions of freedom, justice, and integrity, but in reality, America has none. So let me just give you some news that politicians lie. You know, investing in a country does not mean you're their ally at all. Investing in a country is actually one of the most dangerous things that another country is looking at, because whoever buys in at a massive amount, they own you now. So, and with Israel, with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf nations buying in massive amounts by the billions of dollars into their country, it gives them leverage, because now, wait till you're in the middle of your redevelopment project. Now you're trying to rebuild, let's say, Tel Aviv after the war. And now you're depending on those billions of dollars that's been in holding. And then Saudi Arabia goes, nah, I'm gonna pull that 20 billion back and collapse your project and break your economy and send hundreds of thousands of Israeli people without jobs. This is how economics works. So when people see money moving, and they just look at it as if someone cash out. That Saudi Arabia said they don't like Israel, but they cash out them $500. No, they're buying equity in a country so they can have more control and more say. Therefore, what Tu was calling for, leveraging of oil, Saudi Arabia's only major power resource, doesn't have to happen. That's why another thing that Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries are trying to do is they're trying to become major tech hubs. Because when you become a major tech hub, for example, the second greatest weapon on planet Earth is other than nukes, is Twitter. And Elon Musk was very strategic in buying Twitter. Because with Twitter, you censor and you control the thoughts and the opinions of people simply by what becomes promoted. You can take a certain type of post and make it more visible to the public and be able to sway the minds of millions of people simply because of what they see in their algorithm more and more. China did the same thing with creating TikTok through Singapore and then filtering certain information, what they call woke information, to American people, which ultimately led to massive protests in the United States, which is why Joe Biden tried to do away with TikTok, but Donald Trump didn't mind it. So now the Middle East is seeing, we can control and influence people through technology. Now we want to become an AI hub. Now we want to become a tech hub. We want to invest billions in countries who are our enemies so we can have control over their economies. We're still learning, and this goes for both Africa and the Middle East.
Really? He dropped? Do you have any idea how many munitions he dropped?
Is only 90 plus years old. Most African countries are only 70 years old. And we're just now modernizing. So we're still learning what it means to play this multinational game, this global politics. We're learning.
Don't compare Saudi Arabia to Africa. That's disingenuous.
Okay, can Doctor, you've been going on for a very long time.
Sister, we had an agreement. Right.
If you're gonna take like 10 minutes, then I'm gonna fall asleep.
He loves having
Drink some tea.
He loves having
Drink some tea, Layla. We're not going to go and land your plane, brother.
When she said she's a university student, I thought she needed a professor. So I was trying to give her a lecture on geopolitics.
No, that's not a school class. Come on, man.
Yeah. Okay. So I want you to land. I'll just crash my plane right here, blow up in the concrete, and I'll let someone else.
I mean, look, okay. I don't know. I feel like this whole, like, global economic lecture, as you said, that you just gave me, still doesn't take away from the fact that there's an ongoing genocide in Palestine, and the money that Saudi Arabia is investing in Israel is being used to create bombs, weapons, and more importantly now, especially because I mentioned the Israeli tech sector, and you mentioned it as well, software that is being used to surveil and target Palestinians. So, sure, maybe Saudi Arabia has some long-term opportunity that really only depends that really only is going to work if the genocide ends and if there is an immediate ceasefire. But all these investments that Saudi Arabia is making is not going to help Palestinians in the long run. What if